Hey everyone, it's Raj from 3CB. Arsenal and French center back William Saliba injured his lower left back and hip area during Arsenal's last Europa League matchup in the first half and was removed from that game. He then missed duty with the French international team as well, and we haven't really got much information on what happened. Well, we did receive some tidbits today in terms of his potential availability now and going forward. First, there's been some reporting that originally the club thought he might need surgery and could be out for the season, but based on the evolution of the injury and follow-up assessment and imaging, it's been deemed that he can be managed for the rest of the season. Further, he will be out for this week's matchup versus Leeds, but there's still potential he can return versus Liverpool the following match. Essentially what this sounds like is that Saliba's gonna be managed day to day in terms of his availability, and the key is gonna be how he responds to treatment and ramp ups with activity, which will then dictate his status for each and every game. I imagine that the club will try to get him as healthy as possible for some of the key games and have Rob Holding inserted for the games where he is either feeling more discomfort or those games where they feel that Rob can hold up. Now, this uncertainty and this day-to-day and week-to-week status, of course, is gonna cause some consternation because there is uncertainty and a lot of gray area. You know, I always joke and I always say, if you don't like gray area, you don't like uncertainty, you know, don't get involved in sports medicine, especially within elite sport. Managing injuries, managing load, managing fatigue is inherent within elite sports medicine and the elite sports world. It's not just something that Saliba is dealing with, it's very likely something that many players are dealing with, especially as you get to the end of the season where some fatigue and muscular injuries can crop up. In Saliba's case, we actually saw him get load managed very early in the season where he was missing some full team training sessions. My guess is he probably had some issue due to the adaptation to the Premier League and having to play in these higher intensity matches, but he seemed to push through that just fine. In this case, there does seem to be more of an over injury, so that load management has to be even more sensitive. But with just 10 games left and that Premier League title getting closer and closer, this becomes a case where the parameters of acceptable risk and acceptable discomfort, also which are going to be based on the injury that he has, might get widened a little bit because you are really close now to that title. This is something you see throughout sports. I'll give you two examples in other sports. LeBron James, the Los Angeles Lakers, tore a tendon in his foot, and after taking a month off, he's now back with the team during a critical stretch to get into the playoffs and then in the playoffs. Another example was Philadelphia Eagles Lane Johnson, who suffered a partial tear in an adductor muscle, actually fully tore it on his first snap back in the playoffs and then played the rest of the playoffs with it, and quite well. So, during these high leverage critical schedules, there's always gonna be more acceptable risk, of course, where it doesn't endanger that player's future, and I highly expect they're not endangering Saliba's future here. So based on what's going on, they've deemed it, they can manage that injury. Some have asked me what I think the injury is, and it's really quite hard to say. That low back hip area is quite interrelated. You have a lot of overlapping referral zones. In addition, the mechanism how he injured it was quite innocuous as well. So it's really hard to tell. Regardless of the specific injury, the key is gonna be, as I mentioned earlier, how Saliba responds to treatment, how he responds to activity, and then based on that, progressing or decreasing that activity, and then that will dictate his game to game status, and then of course how he responds to games as well. So really keep an eye out here day to day how he is in training. You might even see him only be in partial team training or individual training for the majority of weeks to really unload that area going into certain matches. I'll keep you updated as we learn more.